2021, the DPS officers have seized enough fentanyl to kill every man, woman, and child in the United States is staggering. And I'd mentioned before about the six out of the 10 pills that are hot in that regard. And we can go into the history and discuss the 4 different waves of where we're at and why we're at right now, but
let me interrupt, but we must be getting a small amount of it because the price of the stuff after all the interdiction does not rise.
Yeah.
I mean, if you took that many refrigerators off the market, the price for refrigerators would go up. You can do all the interdictions, and y'all do the press when you interdict someone on I-10 between the border and Houston. It doesn't impact the cost of it or the supply of it. It doesn't appear to affect the cost or the supply of it at all.
So until the international border with Mexico is secure, there's always going to be challenges. And it's not close to being secure because there's not the sufficient infrastructure in place. Plain and simple, there's not sufficient number of Border Patrol agents in place, ROFO officers, and technology. So it's a sovereign responsibility of the federal government to do it. The sooner they do it, the better for public safety and homeland security in Texas and the rest of the nation. And God bless them if they will do it. It would make our lives much easier, and of course would help us in terms of allocating resources on the many other threats and public safety issues that the Department of Public Safety is charged to do.
Primarily in China or Mexico? I mean,
its precursor chemicals are coming. It's being primarily manufactured in Mexico.
We know where it's coming from.
Yeah.
Source.
Yeah, and we all know the cartels. I mean, the Jalisco New Generation, the Sinaloa cartel, primarily are the ones involved in fentanyl manufacturing. They operate factories 24/7 around the clock. And unlike when we talked about before, they don't need poppies. They don't need cocoa leaves. They don't have to grow it. They can just run it 24/7 in these, and I say labs, super labs, it's more like factories is what it is big business.
I've been told by DEA that we have satellites that'll show because it produces heat where it's being produced.
Yes, sir.
And that would be a federal government issue to either interdict it at its manufacturing site or
right now
or certainly talk to the Mexican government.
And I'm sure you've talked to the DEA and you talked to them. The country attaché is not empowered like he or she used to be, and we aren't proactive as they used to be in terms of Mexico, and it makes a big difference. Bottom line is that whether the Mexican cartels do it through intimidation, coercion, violence, or corruption, they represent a domestic security threat to Mexico and a national security threat to Texas and the nation.
Well, thank you. And one last thing, I hope we'll continue to remind the leadership that it's not just a border issue. They don't remain at the border. They will show up in the streets of Houston, Dallas, and all of our metropolitan areas.
Amen. I haven't talked to local law enforcement.
And our real brothers.
Yes, sir. In West Texas, the same thing. And it always that one thing is that nexus when the gangs and the cartels hook up. That's exactly where it's occurring at on the retail distribution side.
All right. Thank you, Madam.
Thank you. Senator Campbell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I thank you, Director McCraw. I echo the lauding comments that the department's been given, most certainly. I wanted to ask, whenever our troopers are on the border, I mean, there's not many nice hotels down there and housing, you just don't have much to pick from. Do we have temporary housing or something like that would be better suited, not suited, but just better condition?
It all depends on the area, and of course the migration patterns change. As you know, RGV numbers are down comparatively in the past. Del Rio, Maverick County, the numbers are up. So we move resources around. So it's very difficult to say about housing, and we just make the best that we can out of the available lodging that's in the area of operation. And if it's some of those areas they just don't have much lodging, right. The Texas Military Department has actually brought in and established, like forward operating bases that allow for their important partners, allow for their soldiers to be able to stay in those locations. And that's very helpful. And certainly we get support if we ever need to be able to lend ourselves to those resources that are there and available.
I didn't know if we have any mobile resources similar that could be deployed to the border.
We have a mobile command post that could be used, but it's not really designed for.
I see. Okay. Well, I'm most certainly have seen your service and our troopers deliver their their work in a very professional, courteous manner. I've seen the tires being changed at the side of the road, a couple of times as I've been driving. So I think that we have a great DPS department that we can be proud of. And so I appreciate all the work that they do. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Campbell. Senator Paxton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Director, for being here.
Thanks, Senator.
I wanted to, I would also just echo Senator Campbell, the great respect that we have for the work of our agents on the border. Your agency, as Senator Nichols discussed, though, does seem to be kind of stretched thin, and in some areas, perhaps it is the allocation in some of these acute areas of need on the border, et cetera, that account for some of this. But I, too, am very concerned about the situation with the driver's license. I represent Collin County, Hunt County, really fast-growing areas. I know the last time I took one of my daughters to the driver's license office just a couple of years ago, we drove there and the people were in line, wrapped around the building. People literally brought lawn chairs. They knew to bring a lawn chair. It wasn't just that they got there and knew they were going to be there. The reputation was that you're going to be here a while. And I am particularly concerned about, as we look at a situation where we have put money in for the call center. Is the call center located in Austin?
Yes.
Okay. Which, I think
We allow some of our operators to work telecommute as well.
Okay.
So we're not
Makes
limited.
sense.
We're not limited to someone having to live in Austin.
Okay. Well, and I think Senator Perry has made some great comments about perhaps how we look at any of our agencies that have call centers, particularly if a lot of them do tend to they have their origins in Austin for obvious reasons. But when we look at this chart on page 4, starting in 2020, I mean, we were looking at a little over 25%. Just of calls answered. In 2020, there was a little bit of an uptick, and then literally, I mean, and that's around the time that the influx of money went in, and it literally got worse. So, with an average call time of 26 minutes, that's the average. So that means for every person who gave up after 20 minutes, there's somebody that hung on for till 30, I mean, someone that hung on until 40 before they finally got answered. It was somebody else gave up after 10 minutes. So
30 minutes is too long. 15 minutes is too long.
absolutely.
So
5 minutes is a long time to sit on.
I agree. I can't wait for 10
And
minutes.
especially when we've put money into it. So I really just say all of that to say I do have strong agreement with Senator Nichols that this is an administrative function that doesn't seem to be playing to the strengths, maybe is a nice way of saying it, of DPS. There was a mega center built in League City. Is that correct?
Yes.
Dallas, Fort Worth, Arlington, Houston, San Antonio are recognized as the high-growth areas. When is the last time a mega center went into, say, North Dallas or the North Texas area? I think maybe the Carrollton.
I think that may be it. Is that? Okay. Denton. We just opened one in Denton.
Okay.
Okay. And in Collin County.
So near Collin County, but of course there's still a tremendous amount of growth. Denton is not necessarily all that close for a lot of Collin County or Hunt County, which is also really picking up. And so,
and to your point, we've identified those offices, and that would be what the FDA request was, primarily focus on the licensed permanent specialists, the ones that are actually waiting on customers, is the priorities, because that's the biggest challenge. People are calling because they can't get an appointment. They call back and back and back, and the challenge for us is to move to a new appointment system so we can eliminate that aspect of it, and we hope to achieve efficiencies when we do so.
Do you feel like you're well-suited for this task?
I'm not well-suited at all, I can tell you that personally. And as I told
For the agents,
this
yeah.
committee before, I came back to Texas for terrorism and counterterrorism and organized crime, and I stay up at night worrying about driver's license because at the end of the day, we can't have lines wrapped around, and if we do have lines wrapped around, at least what we can control is when we do wait on somebody, we're professional and courteous with that individual and efficient and effective when that happens. That's the only thing we can promise, but I can tell you that the state legislature's it continues to do their job in terms of we ask for resources, we don't try to over-ask, and you provided them consistently. Not one time that I've come here that we've asked for resources that the legislature hadn't recognized the importance of driver's license and provided resources. We've been trying to we've been optimistic, and sometimes overly optimistic that with less we can do more. And I think the appointment system is an example of how efficiencies can be achieved. If people can wait or get an appointment in that regard, it helps balance the workload across the state. It helps us in a number of different ways. And the customer can be assured that we know we can wait on that individual and get them in and out in 24 minutes. So you never see the lines like you saw 2.5 years ago wrapped around buildings. It's unacceptable.
Well, and I think I would just say I think that as Senator Nichols expressed, I think it's something we need to seriously look at as if this really is in the right place, because sadly, instead of being able to do more with less, it almost looks like we've been able to do less with more. And that, I think the driver's license office, with all the growth that we've had in Texas, it literally is one of the first ways that people who've moved to Texas interact with their government.
Yeah.
We've made a lot of, I think, progress in the concept of, letting people know, educating people, you can stand in line or you can do online. And I think that should have been helping things. A person only really needs to go once every 16 years. That ought to help. Mm-hmm. And yet we still have these kinds of lines. And so I think I simply say that because I know in my part of the state, it's a real pain point. And I know it's not only there, but I think we need to seriously consider the recommendations of looking at, and then those dollars are more focused on the mission of just customer service for people in Texas.
Yeah, obviously, whatever the will of the legislature, that's what we'll certainly implement and do what you ask us to do.
Thank you, Director.
Yeah.
Senator Bentecourt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director, been on the stand here for a while, so we have a lot of ground to cover. But let me just relate a humorous story. It kind of relates with Senator Paxton. You mentioned we don't want lines wrapped around the building. My elected predecessor as a tax assessor in Harris County, who went to work at the tax office when Roosevelt was president, that was Franklin, not Teddy. Yeah. During budget periods, he would slow the lines down to get his point across to the Commissioner's Court that he needed additional resources. So I assume that's not happening.
I can assure you that's not happening. I'm not doing that.
All right. Now, on a more serious note, just doing some quick checking. If you try to get an appointment in Austin right now, because my legislative director needs one, it takes over a month. But to get a driver's license appointment. But if you're in Houston, you can get one today. So there seems to be some regional variability here.
Yes, sir.
I don't see any data on that. Is there data that we can see?
Yes, sir.
Because obviously some regions are having far more difficulty than others.
Yes, sir. We got visibility on the data all the way down to individual offices, so we can show you that even times.
Well, I would suggest showing it with the
Yes,
entire committee would be my guess
Yes,
at this point. Now, to follow up on Senator Nichols' comments, The idea that we've got 86.3% call drop is just flat unacceptable.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just not sugarcoating it, but the fact of the matter that we got a 6 out of 7 call drop problem with the DPS driver's license is just flat unacceptable.
Yeah.
All right. Now, Senator Nichols also laid out the issue about the additional 1,063 FTEs, which is an enormous amount of money, nearly $250 million.
Right.
Okay, so I think we've got to see what plans you have, what's happening in the regions. Why do we have a 6 out of 7 call drop problem, which may lead to just, if you have any problem hiring people, I'm not even sure how you can hire that number of people in a call center right now in Austin. Okay, I'm not sure Tesla can hire that number of people in a call center in Austin right now. So there are some real concerns about this because, to I think everybody's point here, for the average law-abiding person, the contact with state government is where?
Driver's license office.
That's it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. If not to follow Senator Campbell's comment about getting the Sumerian tire fixed on the road. And I submit that you've done a tremendous job of getting the rape kit backlogs down, because that number is down to
0.
effectively 0.
Yes, sir.
And watching you and Senator Huffman at the fentanyl lab when we were all there at Jersey Village was is eye-opening, because less than, I'm going from memory, but 2 milligrams of fentanyl and you might have a fatal overdose.
Yeah, there's a lethal dose, yes, sir.
And people take Synthroid and other options for thyroid at 50 milligrams, and they don't blink an eye at it. But there, you could get a fentanyl-laced pill and not be able to open your eyes. So I know about, when you have the focus in the department, what you can do. And the problem, as you said with fentanyl, is all the precursor chemicals, or 80% of them, apparently manufacturing comes from China. They come into Mexico. All you got to do is, it's not a lab. In fact, we should stop calling them labs. It's a criminal manufacturing enterprise to produce an illegal drug that could kill half the United States. That's what we need to call it. Because, right, that's it. Well, I'm assuming that at least half the folks would avoid taking it. And more importantly, so I know what the department can do when they get the focus on this. But we're having a granularity problem with driver's license. We can't accept an 86.3% call drop at the call center. That's the reason why, as Senator Nichols had said, all of our phones have lit up. And the engineering minds here are thinking that we've got to do some industrial engineering on a statewide scale and get this problem resolved. And if that means that it's got to go to another place, it's got to go. Okay? Because you are loaded up with tremendous responsibilities, but the day-to-day servicing the public has to go through it. Now, this is a long question, because I just wanted to, give you, kudos for what you've been doing right. But the fact that we've got this type of granularity between major urban areas on how fast people can get their driver's license right now today tells me that we've got to have more management oversight of this. I'll give it back to you, Director.
Well, as long as we have the function, and we'll do everything we can to provide exceptional service, not adequate, not mediocre, and certainly not rude or surly service to our customers. And we'll continue to, and any improvements that we've had, and there has been some substantial improvements in terms of customer satisfaction, is I attribute to the legislature providing those resources.
Right, and as Senator Nichols laid it out, it was substantial.
Yeah.
Okay. But we're not even in the same exceptional ballpark with 86% call drop at the center.
Yeah, but still, we can't settle for anything less, I'll put it that way.
No, I mean, well, we have to settle for a lot less, okay, call drop.
Yeah.
Okay, and what concerns me is that the actual pickup calls under 5 minutes have dropped. Look, I used to run a call center, the Harris County Tax Office. We used to service the size of a 26th largest state, okay? And we had to do that And when we had a backlog of registrations, guess what happened to our phone calls? Say it.
Yeah. The drop.
Well, no, when we had a backlog, when there was a buildup.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and so you've got a situation where we've got a self-perpetuating problem. But when we have a $250 million FTE request of 1,000 FTEs, I want to see a detailed plan. I want to see what's happening in these individual urban areas. If we've got this type of spread between Austin and Houston, which is literally a 40-some-odd day spread, right now, walk into Houston and get an appointment, or send online, or taking 40 days here in the Austin area. We've got to get better attention to this and balance this load. I'm not trying to take away from all the other good things that you do. You guys stand in a very difficult situation behind a federal partner that's walked off the job, dropped their toolkits, built in a wall, doesn't do what they're supposed to do under federal law. It's pathetic, okay? And injurious to the state. Here, we're just talking about customer service.
Sure.
And I know you can do both, but government here has to do better on driver's license.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so when can we get a detailed report on the areas and the call drops?
We're prepared to give you one this week.
Okay, and if you're looking at drop calls, I want you to look at your phone logs. I want to see what areas of the state your people are bouncing off and that are hanging up. Because that tells you where a big part of your problem is, too.
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Senator Bencourt. Senator Hall.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On driver's license, I'm just going to say ditto. I think everybody has described it. Senator Bencourt hit it, Senator Paxton, Senator Nichols. What I'd like to talk about are the commercial driver's license.
Yes, sir.
How many locations do we now have for getting a license?
For commercial vehicles, what are we up to right now? If you don't mind, if I can invite Colonel Williams up here, that he can answer directly.
Sure.
On that question.
And the companion to that is, what was it a few years ago when we made a rather a significant reduction made in the number of locations?
Jeff Williams, Lieutenant Colonel, oversee the driver license division.
Could you please identify yourself?
Yes, sir. Jeff Williams, Lieutenant Colonel. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
The number of commercial driver license locations is, I'll have to find that in this myriad of information.
That's right. But we did, you recall, we did make you guys had a significant reduction.
Correct.
In locations. And
there was
only place.
Yeah, based upon federal rules and regulations, they had some cascading requirements on that sent down to the state that required us to close some of the centers that we had, and the only offset that we were able to have center at that point is to use some of the commercial driving schools, commercial vehicle driving schools, to have them give us a location where we'd be able to send testers over there to be able to do it.
We had 33.
33?
Yeah, 33. Recently, the federal government changed the way the test is conducted, which eliminated some of those offices from being a spot.
Okay. Now, I have multiple pilot's license, commercial, instrument, multi-engine rating, land and sea, ultralight instructor. I have never been to an FAA flight school. I have never had a check ride by someone employed by the federal government to fly an airplane. And with a few more check rides, I could fly most anything out there. Why can we not do the same thing for truck drivers? Why can we not license individuals, just like the FAA does, to conduct the test? Or as a minimum, the schools themselves. I mean, I see no reason that an individual shouldn't be able to do it, and have the schools do it. It would be a tremendous service to the people that have to go through the arduous process of, and many of the complaints I've got is that, the disconnect between what happens in the final test and what's happening in the schools like that. But I would think that you could reduce the government side of the expense on this and look and have the test given by individuals that are qualified. Do you have some means of issuing a license, just like the FAA does, for folks that would be then qualified to conduct the test.
So we have some third-party skills testing centers that are coming online, and we have more of those that are coming online. The issue was the data transfer from those, and we've kind of worked through some of those, so they're growing. Since that reduction, we had 25 when it was reduced. We've now gone up to 33. So we are trying to expand that. We definitely want to expand it.
I mean, I would think that'd be a goal to just, I agree with you. Your job is to protect the people out there from the really bad guys coming across the border and the other stuff that's really threatening lives. I mean, I understand you're protecting people by having adequate training to drive the trucks. But the real job that you ought to be focused on for your real skill sets out there of the training, work your way out of the business or out of it. I think the idea of it, because you're talking about an administrative kind of thing that's more administrative than anything else. And so I would like to talk with you some more about, and we're probably going to have a bill along that line to maybe accelerate that process to let you be able to spend more time at the border and going after the bad guys, and see if we can't get that into the hands of a, more of an administrative function.
Yes, yes, certainly, Senator. I would want to say a thing. One of the challenges we have, because we're always having ongoing criminal investigations, because one of the things that we're always concerned about is the security of these documents. There's certainly tied to each one of those driver's licenses the crown jewels of personal identification information, so we're cognizant of that. And I can tell you, we've got ongoing criminal investigations right now, and that soon that will come to fruition, that where people have targeted and been able to get replicant driver's license in that regard. So it's another area. I just put it in there. When you look at the exceptional item requests, they need to be secured. I mean, the cyber part is real. The threat is real. And although we've done a good job of protecting that driver's license database, there's still workarounds that would allow people to be able to get a replacement driver's license. And although we can close those gaps, there's other gaps that are created. So we're mindful of that. And I just wanted to throw that out as another issue related to driver's license.
No, I understand. Yep. We have to draw the line somewhere that makes the most sense, or look at how do we structure it so we minimize it. I know all of the cyber issue, the fraud, it's always going to exist no matter what we come up with. As soon as we draw our line in the sand on what we're going to do, people go to work on how do we get around it, how we're going to beat it. And so that will exist. Yeah. But I think the major change to bring relief to folks trying to get a license, it'll make it much more convenient for them to be able to go to the school, get trained, and last day there, graduation day, you take the test.
Yes, sir.
Or someone that freelances. I'm a qualified CDL tester, and you can arrange with me, and I've got to deal with the schools that I can use their facility, but I'm licensed by the state to conduct this test.
We're certainly not committed to any bureaucracy to the extent that we can be outsourced, the better. We would agree with that 100%.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Kolkhorst, thanks for being patient. You're down there at the bottom.
Thank you so much. It's great to see you. Thank you to your agency, to all the troopers on the roads right now protecting Texas and what they do. We're forever grateful.
Thank you.
For their willingness to serve and put their life on the lines every day. So thank you, Director McCraw, to your staff. I'm looking on page 5 of the LBB report, and I just, in glancing at that, it's stated that you're losing somewhere between 160 to 165 commissioned staff per year. And the next line is, or 320 to 330 per biennium. And, when we look at the training facilities, current facilities can accommodate a maximum of 3 recruit schools per fiscal year, 6 per biennium. And what's proposed in the budget is that we're actually going to be, we're net to the bad. And you made a statement while you were talking that how many troopers do you have, commissioned officers? It's 3,000 and something.
No, we have about 43. The exact number is 46. 61 FTEs is what we have right now.
What?
That includes Texas troopers, it includes Texas Rangers and special agents.
Did you make a statement earlier that it was over 5,000 that you probably need? Just
5,200, we have over 5,000 troopers alone, about 250 Texas Rangers and 910 special agents.
During your exchange with the dean, and talking about the stress or the extra responsibility of the border, which I certainly support 1,000%, but I also know that it's a lot for your agency, and it's what we have to do. So I see that there's a proposal maybe for a fourth class with the investment that you're asking for in a training facility in Williamson County with the extra facilities. Is there a day that we can actually get to those numbers that you think are appropriate?
We've got. Well, I think we can. But we have to be realistic in a sense right now that there's every police agency in this nation is having difficult recruiting into our profession. A bad summer of 2020, other variables that affected the profession, if you will. That said, we're cautiously optimistic. We've got 96 in school right now. We've been very good at recruiting outside the state. From former more military and as well veterans, but also other police officers, even state police agencies have come to work in Texas. And I credit that primarily because the Texas state legislature cares about public safety, that's law enforcement and military, and making a livable salary that they can come to and work in Texas. So we're cautiously optimistic that we'll see the next schools will be over 100. In class. One of the reasons for the training academy recommendation is it's very difficult to have, two. We can have two at a time, but trying to overlap three is vitally important when you're talking about a natural attrition. 150 a year is usually what the natural attrition is, and to maintain, in terms of eliminate that delta, which is the first and foremost priority. And then address the other incremental increases that we need to be able to address the missions that you've given us and the threats to the state and the ever-growing population that we have to, as well, that impacts in terms of what we're doing.
So, right, and you mentioned how we're growing and the pressures and that we're on top of what we see in the border. With regards to Operation Lone Star, just a question to follow up on, the human trafficking. We've had good discussion today about the drug trafficking, the fentanyl issues, among others. Do our troopers have the authority to check trucks that are coming through the border security checkpoints? Because it's our understanding and our staff that y'all really only have the authority to check vehicles, but maybe we're misinformed.
No, commercial vehicle enforcement, when we do these operations, whether we do them on an international, right off the international bridge, or where we do them, we have the ability to open the back and look at it. Now, as it relates to, other situations, and it's really driven by reasonable suspicion and probable cause. Okay.
I know that in Senate District 18, we had a situation, and it involved a tractor trailer and over 100 illegal immigrants that had been trapped in that trailer for some time during the very hot months. And so, is there any coordination with, and does the Department of Agriculture have any authority to check trucks? And is there any coordination going on there?
I think they do have authority, but we don't, I know they're not coordinated with our commercial vehicle enforcement checkpoints.
Okay, good. Thank you for that. And, I know we talked a little bit about Uvalde and, active shooter training, and you made the statement that it's a setback, what we saw happen there. Do we have enough active shooter training, not just for DPS? We're talking about all of our local law enforcement across our state.
Well, I'm convinced that everyone needs the training. I don't think there's any question about it. Not just an abbreviated course, but the full training. In fact, if I ask Colonel Williams to speak to that point, since he's one of the originals that have been involved in the ALERT program, if you don't mind.
Sure. I've been part of the ALERT program, which is connected to Texas State University. that is the premier active shooter training entity in the world, frankly. They wrote the curriculum after Columbine and have since developed that curriculum into many classes. And so there's a whole menu of classes. It's not a simple one-time class that you take and you're good for the, it'd be, there's a whole series of classes involving a solo officer response, obviously the level 1 course. There's some medical courses that are there. There's the AIR course, AAIR, the Active Attack Integrated Response, where we now start talking about the follow-on responders. And so there's a whole menu of classes that everyone needs in order to be efficient at one of these things. When an active shooter event happens, there is a clock ticking. And the faster we can resolve getting that last ambulance door shut, the more likelihood of someone surviving. And so law enforcement has to be, along with fire and EMS, trained so that we look like a NASCAR pit crew to get those folks to where they need to go, to the healing hands of a surgeon. The alert program sets the foundation for the level 1 course, and then from that they build on that in order to make people efficient at it. And so it's a never-ending process, and there's many things to train on it.
And these training facilities, I mean, is it all done at Texas State? Are there sub-regionals? I've been made aware, and Montgomery County has created and looking to expand upon active shooter training there. And so and I know this is super important, that we have the integration all the way down to, just not our DPS troopers, all the way down to the deputy sheriff or our city police. And are those all over the state? Is Montgomery County unique in this?
Most of those training classes are conducted at a school or some type of office building today. There are training facilities around the state, but not near enough to satisfy the hundreds of classes that need to take place. And so typically what happens is a local sheriff's deputy or a trooper will engage the school district and ask for, hey, do you have a school that's shut down, or maybe we can do it on the weekends. I've actually taught classes in the middle of the night at an active school. And so, it's like teaching someone to swim. You need to be able to have a pool available for them to get in and swim. And so we got to put them in an environment where we can teach the learning objectives of the course. And that typically needs to be done in something that looks like a commercial building or somewhere where it would be a target. There's also courses that take place outside. There's, the exterior response to an active shooter event that simulates like a football stadium or a concert or something like that. So there's many places. The venue matters because terrain dictates how you conduct the training. And so you can't just notionally do it. You have to actually put someone in the environment. Obviously, the training facilities that are designed for that are ideal, but schools serve that purpose in most places around the state.
Excellent. Madam Chair, I look forward to working with you on this important issue, again, to allow all levels of our law enforcement to be trained, and super complimentary to Montgomery County, who has really taken this on as an initiative and, to my knowledge, has trained thousands of police forces from all over the world. And I think we should maybe augment that and potentially maybe regionally have some of those set up. So it's not falling all on DPS, but we work with our local agencies that are taking this on and trying to protect their local communities and emanate out from there and bring in other law enforcement as well. Thank you so much, Madam Chair.
Thank you,
And one great point that you had mentioned, but it's also important to train with among, because the way we respond, without question, is always going to be an integrated response. So you need to show up. So it's not, you don't wait for a particular SWAT. You got to, whoever's in that stack needs to go at that point in time. So my compliments to the sheriff in Montgomery County, and was always leaning forward anyway. And we've got some great sheriffs and really chiefs of police around the state that understand the importance of this training, and we've been blessed by that.
Senator Betancourt, did you have another question because your light was still
on?
No. Senator Perry.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I appreciate Senator Colcourse bringing this up, going through the committee that we sat through. So I'm a little bit confused as to what is and is not done and what is required. We all understand the gold standard of alert. We all understand that's Texas State campus. I assume you pretty much got to go there, or I think they come to you. They can come out to you. But here's what I understand: Basic Training Academy for law enforcement, and I'm talking from the police chiefs, the sheriffs, and up, you got these regional training centers. Some do active shooting and some do not. So it's not a required component, first of all. Is that correct or not correct?
Correct.
So and I'm going to ask this straight up, and I think I know the answer. Coming out of those shootings, and it's a matter of cost and time, because these academies are trying to get guys out on the streets as fast as they can. They're running them through. There's a mental health conversation about this very thing too. But each regional academy decides whether they do it or not, and then if they choose to do it and call it active shooter training, it's typically a one-day in a classroom, after hours, or some setup, and that's it.
I would agree. Yes.
So my point is, after that shooting and seeing it, and I do agree with you, and you've said it 100 times, the guy on the campus first has one job, and that's to neutralize the shooter, whatever it takes. There is no hostage situation. It's get there and get your job done. Now, you do it smartly, if you can kind of garner help after you survey. But my point is, do we not need to, one, if the alert model is the model that we all need to be under, and I don't know how you do an 100 class situation, but do we make all regional training centers for academies require some component that covers active shooting in a real way?
Well, we won't talk about, obviously it's a policy question, but I can tell you the answer from my standpoint, yes, absolutely. Everyone needs it, and if it's required, it's the only way you're going to make everyone get it. And of course, there's not all, as you pointed out, not all active shooter courses are the same. There's and as Colonel Williams talked about, and I'll let you talk about some more, why it's all of it is important.
Yeah, there are some parts of classes that are being taught that are strictly a PowerPoint. Someone's up there clicking through the slides, and so you end up losing the actual important part. It'd be like going to med school but never actually putting your hands on someone. And so you got to actually get in the hallway and work as a team and do the practical things that are required. Many states around the nation have adopted the alert program as a requirement for a basic peace officer course.
So that goes to my point. Do we require a statewide certification that alert training becomes part of your academies? Second to that, you're not Texas State, but do you believe they have the network to do, and I said 16 regional training centers? I'm sorry, academies or...
It may be.
I'm not sure.
To TICO on that.
So I can ask them, and we will follow up, but do you think they can do that as a practical matter to get around to these academies?
I've been part of the alert program for, I don't know, since there wasn't an alert program, and the answer is solidly yes, it can be done.
So we just need to get a price tag on that, because I love my academies, and my locals are trying to get people on the street, but truthfully, it's not a priority for them. Not because they don't want to do it, but they've got all these other metrics to check off.
Thank you. Senator Colcourse, did you need to follow up?
Yeah, I'd like to follow up just a little bit, but I know in Montgomery County that they are using alert in that facility and actually have certified county employees to teach. So I think there's a certification process that could go on through alert, and then, again, the dissemination of that. And so, you get trained, you go out, and then we can have those regional facilities and ongoing training, as we all know.
The department's we have certified instructors
Yeah.
through the alert program, so it's like training the trainer, so our capacity grows and we can help part of that. And then, quite frankly, other police departments have taken on that role as well.
Yeah, I think this is super important that we use our local and Director McCraw, as you said, we've got some outstanding sheriffs out there and some of the police chiefs that are really leading in this issue, and not only wanting to protect their communities, but willing to share that with other communities around them.
And you know what? You never know when it's going to happen, where it's going to happen.
Right.
So it could be a small community, it could be a large community. So everyone, needs to understand the doctrine, so there's just no equivocation at the point, and not just in terms of officers, but leadership.
Amen. Thank you.
Senator Flores.
Just one quick follow-up on Senator Perry's point and Senator Coco's point. So So, and it's probably a question we'll also pose at TCO, but in our training academies, making this type of training a basic requirement for peace officer certification will certainly be a big step in the right direction to make sure that every peace officer that goes through any academy would have this requirement to get. That's a big step forward. Would you agree with that statement?
Correct.
So that be something you would recommend to us as policymakers and, members of finance that, that basic requirement added to peace officer certification and training would be something in the best interest of our state in this issue?
Yes, sir. I would suggest that most chiefs and sheriffs would agree.
I think so. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Flores. Okay, Colonel McCraw, you made it through. No more questions.
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you what you've done for state employees. That I can tell you that 10% increase is greatly appreciated, and you'll never know how much it matters. So thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for being here. Okay, we're going to move on to the Department of Criminal Justice, and we're going to start with the LBB presentation on the adult correctional population projections. And I guess you'll have one for the adult and one for the juvenile, right? Yeah, let's start with the adult. You can get started. Go ahead.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Lan Bolding with the Legislative Budget Board, and I'll be presenting on the presentation, looks like this with the red front. It's the overview of adult and juvenile correctional populations. And I'll be starting with the adult populations. This information, both adult and juvenile, is based off of our July 22 projections report, and these numbers were used for the introduced bill. We're currently finalizing our updated projections and hope to provide them to the committee in the very near future. Starting on page 2, this is the adult misdemeanor community supervision placements. These placements have been steadily decreasing through fiscal year 2019 and then had a significant decrease in fiscal year 20. That significant decrease was due to modified practices within the criminal justice system due to the COVID-19 pandemic, and you'll see that similar effect throughout most of these populations in fiscal years 20 and 21. We projected these placements to return near where it would have been had it continued that pre-pandemic downward trend, and then to continue gradually decreasing from there. I should also note that this population is the only adult program that we project placements instead of an average monthly population, and that's due to the funding method for misdemeanor. Turning to page 3. This is the adult felony direct community supervision population. The average monthly population decreased significantly from fiscal year 2020 to 2021 due to reduced placements. We projected it increasing starting in fiscal year 23 through 26 before stabilizing. I should also note on this one, our monthly reports, which are published on our website, indicated that this population increased more than we had expected over the remainder of fiscal year 22. Our updated projections take that data into account, and that trend will be reflected. Turning to page 4, this is the incarceration population. This includes prison, state jail, substance abuse felony punishment facilities, also known as SAFE-P. This population also saw a significant decrease in fiscal years 20 and 21, and we projected it increasing from there through the upcoming biennium before stabilizing. And throughout the projection period, it's expected to stay below internal operating capacity. Turning to page 5, this is our final adult population. This is our active parole supervision population. The pandemic effect was a little more unique on this population in the fact that in fiscal years 20 and 21, individuals continued to be reviewed, approved, and then subsequently released onto parole. That's why you didn't have the immediate decrease in fiscal years 20 and 21 like the other populations. And we projected that these would increase slightly starting in fiscal year 23 through 27 as that incarceration population increases. And that concludes the adult population. And I'll turn it over to Eric to talk about juvenile population.
Yes, please do. Thank you.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members. My name is Eric Schroeder with the Legislative Budget Board. I'll be discussing the juvenile populations. So starting on page 6. Page 6 shows the actual and projected formal referrals to local juvenile probation departments. Formal referrals include youth who have allegedly engaged in delinquent conduct, conduct indicating a need for supervision, or conduct violating a condition of probation. Referrals decreased during fiscal years 2020 and 21, and we projected that referrals would then increase in 22 and 23, then stabilize at their pre-pandemic levels through 2027. Turn to page 7. Page 7 shows actual and projected average daily populations for juvenile probation supervision. Probation supervision also decreased in 2020 and 2021. We projected an increase in 22 and 23 corresponding with the projected increase in referrals, followed by a gradual decrease through 2027. Turn to page 8. Page 8 shows actual and projected average daily populations of youth committed to state residential facilities, as well as the budgeted operating capacity of those facilities. These include TJJD's 5 secure facilities, its halfway houses, and contract facilities. The state residential population has been decreasing for several years, beginning well before the pandemic. We projected an increase through 2024 as courts resolve any remaining backlog caseloads and TJJD resolves its pending admissions log, before decreasing again as the juvenile justice system stabilizes into pre-pandemic trends. However, TJJD limited admissions due to staff issues in June 2022, causing the population to continue decreasing. And as a result, our monthly reports show that the 2022 population came in below the projection. Please turn to page 9. Page 9 shows actual and projected average daily populations of TJJD parole supervision. Like the state residential population, the parole supervision population has been decreasing for several years. We projected a stable population through the current biennium before decreasing from 2024 to 27. However, as with the state residential population, our monthly reports show that the 2022 population came in below projections. And thank you. This concludes my presentation.
Okay, do we have any question on those numbers? I don't see any. So we will move on to the LBB presentation on the budget for the Department of Criminal Justice.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, members of the committee. My name is Corey Sharp. I'm with the Legislative Budget Board, and I'm going to walk you through our summary of recommendations for the Texas Department of Criminal Justice and the administratively attached Board of Pardons and Paroles, which is represented in Gold D of their bill pattern. Section 1 contains a high-level overview of our recommendations, which provide a total of $8 billion in all funds, an $877.2 million increase over 2022-23 biennium. Turning to page 2. Section 2 offers a more detailed summary of funding changes and recommendations. The significant items listed here, items A through F, I will go into more detail in during Section 3. I just want to draw your attention to item G. This contains a GR-CRF swap in the amount of $761.4 million, and item H includes an additional $300 million in GR for the statewide salary increase. If you would turn with me now to page 4, the selected fiscal and policy issues. Recommendations provide $374.8 million to continue the 15% pay increase that was provided to correctional officers in April of 2022. The figure to the left documents correctional officer vacancies over the past couple of years, and the figure on the right compares the statewide, agency-wide, and correctional officer-specific turnover rates for the past several years. Item 2 discusses funding for community supervision and correction departments, or CSCDs, whose funding is contained in Goal A within TDCJ's bill pattern. Recommendations provide $607.7 million in GR, an increase of $118.8 million over the 22-23 biennium. This increase includes a $64.8 million to fund salary increases for CSCD staff commensurate with the statewide pay raise, $47.8 million to provide additional funding for basic operations and programming, and replace $13 million in appropriated receipts with GR. These appropriated receipts reflected anticipated refund collections from CSCDs from the prior biennium, which are now anticipated to be zero. Item 3 discusses correctional managed healthcare, recommendations for which provide $1,394 million in GR. The agency is requesting an additional $309 million in increased funding in their first priority exceptional item. Turning to page 5. Of this item, $245.8 million would fund a continuation of current service levels at forecasted 24-25 costs. $53 million would fund a system-wide 15% market adjustment to all correctional managed healthcare staff. $8.6 million would fund capital equipment replacements, and $2.6 million would allow the hiring of 18 new mental health clinicians. Recommendations for correctional managed healthcare also include funding to continue the 9.9% pay increase that was provided to nursing staff at the same time that correctional officers received their 15% raise in April of 2022. Funding to provide a salary increase to non-nursing staff commensurate with the statewide pay raise, and funding to establish a sheltered housing facility at the Montford unit. Item 4 discusses privately operated facilities and programs. Recommendations include $34.2 million to fund the resumption of services at the privately operated Bradshaw State Jail, and $14.5 million to fund per diem rate increases for other operations currently under contract. The agency is also requesting $76.7 million in their second priority exceptional item to fund new competitive contracts at private prisons and other programs whose contracts will expire at the end of this fiscal year. Item 5 addresses the funding impact of LBB's population projections, which my colleague Lan Bolding just discussed with you. Both the populations under basic and parole supervision are forecast to increase in 24-25, and recommendations include an additional $11 million in GR between strategies A11 for basic supervision and E22 for parole supervision. I would also note that with the release of the updated projections, those figures may change. Item 6, recommendations include $105.4 million for deferred maintenance, and the agency is requesting an additional $127.2 million in their 12th exceptional item. This table shows the types of projects that would be funded with these funds. I would also like to point out that recommendations for the supplemental bill include an additional $23.8 million in security projects. Item 7 discusses the agency's border security funding. Recommendations include $24 million to operate 2 units that are currently being used to house inmates arrested in connection with Operation Lone Star. This funding allows the agency to operate these facilities at county jail standards. Turning to page 6.